The city woke up like a living heartbeat, engines humming, coffee brewing, and 1,000 dreams colliding under the morning sun. Skyscrapers caught the light like blades of glass, and the marble plaza below shimmered with reflections of people rushing toward their ambitions. Among them, one little girl stood still. Her name was Sophie, 6 years old, quiet, curious, holding a tiny toy rabbit that dangled from her small fingers. The soft pink of her dress stood out against the sea of suits and briefcases. She didn't belong to this world of business and urgency, yet here she was, because life doesn't always go according to plan. Her mother, Clara, worked as a corporate translator for one of the wealthiest businessmen in the city, Mr. Ling, a self-made millionaire whose empire spanned continents. That morning was supposed to be just another routine stop. Their babysitter had cancelled, and Clara had promised Sophie it would be quick, just a short meeting, then they'd go for ice cream. But sometimes, fate rewrites even the most ordinary mornings. Before we dive deeper, if you believe in kindness, courage, and second chances, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your small act of support helps stories like this reach more hearts. The glass doors of the tower gleamed as Clara crouched beside Sophie, adjusting her cardigan. Behind them, 3 uniformed security guards stood by a sleek black car waiting near the curb. Mr. Ling had just finished a press meeting and was preparing for his next event. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. The air was calm, almost rehearsed, like a stage before a performance. Sophie watched the guards whispering to each other, their voices low but serious. Her mother was busy gathering her papers, but Sophie listened, her small head tilted in curiosity. At first, the words made no sense. Then suddenly they did. Clara had been teaching her daughter small phrases in different languages, a game they played at home. One of those languages was Chinese. And though Sophie only knew a handful of words, what she heard that morning froze her blood. "The bomb is under the seat," one guard murmured. "He won't make it past the bridge." Sophie didn't move. Her tiny fingers clenched around her toy, and her heart pounded so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Her mother noticed the sudden stillness. "Sophie?" she whispered, kneeling beside her. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" The girl didn't answer. Her lips trembled, her wide eyes locked on the guards. Just a few steps away, Mr. Ling was walking toward the car, smiling, shaking hands, unaware that death waited under his seat. And then, from the center of the busy plaza, a voice rang out. "Don't get in the car!" It wasn't loud, but it carried. It cut through the noise of engines, footsteps, and chatter like a blade. The whole plaza froze. People turned. Cameras stilled. Even the birds above seemed to stop mid-flight. The guard's head snapped around. One of them went pale, another reached for his earpiece. Clara's heart dropped. She didn't know what Sophie meant, but she could feel the terror behind her daughter's words. Mr. Ling stopped mid-stride, confusion etched across his face. Then he saw the little girl, trembling, pointing at his car. Something in her eyes, something pure and desperate, made him hesitate. "Wait!" he ordered. The security team surged forward. One guard insisted everything was fine, but his voice cracked. Another popped the car door open. And then, they heard it. A faint ticking. The sound that kills silence. Everything exploded into motion. People screamed. Officers shouted for evacuation. Clara pulled Sophie into her arms and ran as sirens blared across the plaza. And then, the blast. A flash of white-orange light ripped through the air. The shockwave shattered glass and sent debris flying. Smoke swallowed the morning sky. The car, the one Sophie had pointed to, was gone. When the echo faded, the world fell quiet except for the ringing in everyone's ears. Mr. Ling was on the ground, his white shirt streaked with dust, his suit torn at the shoulder, but alive. Sophie sobbed into her mother's chest, her face buried, her small hands gripping Clara's sleeve like she'd never let go. 2 of the guards were tackled and arrested on the spot. Investigators later confirmed what Sophie had overheard, an assassination plot, organized by a rival company. The 2 men were imposters, hired through a shell security firm. If not for that single moment, that one frightened child's courage, the story would have ended very differently. Hours later, under the harsh lights of a police station, the millionaire sat across from Clara and Sophie. He looked smaller somehow, stripped of his armor of wealth and confidence. "She saved my life," he whispered. Sophie hid behind her mother's arm, her cheeks stained with tears. She didn't understand the full weight of what she'd done, she just knew she was scared. "I don't think anyone has ever done that for me before," he said softly. Days turned to weeks. The story spread like wildfire. "Millionaire saved by child's warning." Headlines loved it. News anchors called Sophie the little angel of the plaza. But the cameras didn't capture what happened after. They didn't show the quiet dinners, the laughter, the bond that grew between the three. Mr. Ling began visiting often. He learned that Clara had been raising Sophie alone since her husband's passing 2 years earlier, balancing translation work and motherhood in a small apartment at the edge of the city. He saw the humility in her life, and the strength in her love. And something in him shifted. For years, Mr. Ling had measured his worth in numbers, deals, and the silent applause of success. But now, he found himself drawn to their warmth, to home-cooked meals, to a child's laughter echoing through the hall, to simple conversations that didn't end in profit. Sophie began calling him Uncle Ling. He began smiling again. One evening, as they shared tea on the balcony, he looked out over the glittering skyline and said quietly, "You know, I built an empire, but it took a little girl to remind me what life actually means." His words weren't grand, but they were real. Soon after, he launched a foundation in Sophie's name, the Sophie Initiative, a program that helped children from low-income families learn foreign languages. "So they can be brave too," he said with a smile. "Because bravery begins with understanding." The foundation grew quickly, classrooms filled with eager faces, laughter echoing down hallways where hope lived again. But for Mr. Ling, the biggest change wasn't public. It was personal. He started spending less time chasing deals and more time mentoring, volunteering, and, for the first time in years, simply listening. He visited Clara and Sophie often, not as a businessman, but as family. Months later, on a crisp spring morning, the three returned to the same plaza where it all began. The air smelled of coffee and new beginnings. The rebuilt corner of the parking area gleamed under the sunlight, calm and ordinary, just as it should have been that day. Mr. Ling knelt down to meet Sophie's eyes. "You didn't just save my life, Sophie," he said quietly. "You reminded me how to live it." The little girl smiled shyly, her hands slipping into his. Clara's eyes shimmered with tears as she whispered, "She has her father's heart." The glass towers reflected the rising sun, a mirror of second chances. Around them, the city moved on, unaware that something beautiful had been reborn here, faith in humanity. And maybe that's what courage really is, not the absence of fear, but the decision to speak when your heart knows something's wrong. Before we close this story, if this moment touched your heart, please take a second to like, share, and subscribe to the Kindness Spot. Yellow Heart. Because somewhere out there, another little Sophie is watching the world, listening, learning, and ready to speak up when it matters most. Sometimes the smallest voices carry the loudest truths. And sometimes kindness, spoken in any language, can save the world. White heavy check mark.